Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and welcome to my May 2020 horoscope report for you. I am over the moon excited to announce the launch of my new book, Planetology: How to Align with the Natural Rhythms of the Universe. And this is published through Watkins Media in the UK, and facilitating distribution worldwide is our partner, Penguin Random House. You can look up Annie Planetology in any search and you will find it for pre-order, and you can get more information about it. I'm very excited, and I hope it really helps you because that's the intention of my creating it. So I'm going to give you a quick introduction here, just about some general things to know, and then we'll get into some a lot of sign-specific things, really focused on Venus retrograde, where it's going to show up for your sign, and the special things to know about that, and also where this June 5th eclipse is going to show up in your chart. This is really critical because we are entering eclipse season very hot and heavy as of May. You might start to see eclipse manifestations even in April, 6 to 8 weeks before. The eclipses tend to get very hot, and we've got this grand finale of the Capricorn Cancer eclipse cycle. So lots of things involving home and work, and as we see now with what's going on with the coronavirus and all of the breakdown of things in the world that seem to be related to the coronavirus, but really all of this is astrological. A lot of topics of home and work and working from home and distance, everything about distance and distancing is coming up in a big way. So this eclipse cycle is going to bring a lot of information about how this is all going to go. Definitely stay tuned after this video. I will be putting at the end my video called The Astrology of 2020, and that's going to be my input on the coronavirus as it relates to the astrology, things that are going on with the systems in the world, and how I believe we can make the most of the opportunities that are coming and deal with the challenges that are also here. Okay, so definitely listen for that after this video. So there are 3 eclipses, one on June 5th, a lunar eclipse at 15 degrees of Sagittarius. Then we have on June 21st, a solar eclipse at 0 degrees. And then we have on July 5th, a lunar eclipse at 13 degrees of Capricorn. Okay, so in the May report, I'm going to show you where this June eclipse is happening. In the June report, I'm going to talk about the locations of the second June eclipse, where that is going to be for you. And in the July report, I'll talk about the location of the July eclipse. Okay, so between 3 horoscopes, we'll cover all of the energies, how that's going to look for you. Venus retrograde is very, very major right now because we are actually in it May 13th through June 25th. Venus, the ruler of love and relationships, money and finances, and beauty and self-esteem and design projects and artistic expression. Major rulership of the domains of Venus are coming up in a big way. And I have created lots of resources for you, including a Venus retrograde blog that you can find if you just search for Annie Botticelli Venus retrograde. You'll find all of these resources that I have. And in these May videos, I am going to show you in the chart where that is for you. I've had a lot of requests to go back to the format where I show you the charts and show you more specific detail for the early, middle, and late degree placements, what certain things look like. From the last eclipse cycle, I had some terrible endings that happened then that I had to work with, so I wasn't able to put the extra time in with doing the charts, but now in this month I'm bringing them back. So definitely please let me know if you want me to keep doing that, because I do listen to your feedback. I listen to nice feedback. If people are mean, I don't listen to them. So anything nicely worded, I definitely take into consideration. So we've got a really very important month here. 2020 is one of the most pivotal years of our time. And so May is another cog in the wheel of this time. So I'm going to go into a lot of those details of what that Venus retrograde specifically is going to look like. So let's go ahead and drill down to this sign specific. Oh wait, one more thing. I am creating a free course on claiming victory from viruses. Okay, this topic is very near and dear to my heart, which I will explain in detail in the actual course, why I know so much about this. Spirit has been prepping me to assist with viruses for a while, and there's just way too much information on this topic for me to bring out in the videos. So I'm going to create a whole class about this that I'll continue adding to. So you can register for that class at lumelife.com, L-U-M-E life.com. Search for Luminous Life Multiversity in my name, and you can see there in the free course listings that you can enroll in the school and in the course for free, so that you can understand how to protect yourself from viruses, understand what they're doing. And I also will go into quite a bit of detail about the bigger picture of how viruses are part of our human evolution and how to work with them in the video called Astrology of 2020 that will follow this video. Okay, so now let's go into the sign-specific movement of Venus retrograde and what types of implications we can see from this and that placement of the June 5th eclipse for you.
Hello, Aries friends. We've got a wonderful time of the Venus retrograde transit making sweet aspects to your Aries placement, and the lunar eclipse that's going to start heavily influencing, also making a sweet aspect to your Aries placements. So we've got a lot to discuss as far as where exactly Venus is going to be retrograde for you. If you've watched my report last month, I was talking about the general implications of Venus retrograde, and we'll touch on a few of those, but I do have lots of resources for you to see, so we're not going to go as much into that and more into the specific of where it's going to hit for you. I have Aries rising, so in general, I'm very excited about the energies of this month. Now, I know there's going to be at least one person that's going to be thinking, how could you be very excited in a time where there's mass chaos in the world and don't you know what's going on? Okay, so to that, I will make sure, hopefully you will make sure to listen to my Astrology of 2020 video that's going to come after this that will talk about my take on the coronavirus and the systems failing. And although I know a lot of people are suffering from this, and I'm not making light of the suffering and the difficulties that are happening, all of these, we still have to live, okay? We still have our lives, whether we're on quarantine or whatever's happening. And when the planets are moving in a language that we speak, it can really add to the type of positive experience that we have regardless of what's going on in the world. Okay, so I am excited about the way these aspects are lining up for us, and we're going to go into some more details about that. All right, so many of the things I talk about will be true for all Aries placements, and when that is so, I will let you know. There are also going to be times where I'm drilling down into more specific where you are in the Aries spectrum. There's 30 degrees at 30 days of the Aries placements. So early degree placements basically are March born or 0 to 9 degrees. And by the way, as I told you, I have Aries rising. Those of you who have Aries rising with me, this report is for you just as much as for the Aries sun. And if you have your moon in Aries, our wild friends with their moon in Aries, this report for you is just as equally for you as for the other placements. All right, so middle degree placements, April 1st through 10th, or 10 to 19 degrees if you know your degree. Late degree placements around April 11th through the rest of the sign, or 20 to 29 degrees. The charts tend to look a little bit different depending on where you're at. I have a late degree sun and moon, which is how I came to realize this myself over time when I would watch horoscopes, which I don't watch horoscopes anymore, but in the past when I did, I would notice like, hey, that's kind of staggered for me, or that's not exactly happening now. And then I figured out it's because my chart doesn't look like the charts that astrologers tend to use when they're doing readings. People in the late bucket tend to get, just not always the accurate information. And those of you in the middle, there's also a little bit of variability there. Okay, so let's just look at some general Aries things. I'm going to use the early chart, but I'm talking about all of you unless I otherwise designate. We have a lot of activity in air. Okay, so we have Aquarius making nice aspects to Aries. We've got a lot of energy in Gemini, and these two planets will be joining here soon. Well, the sun will join there after 3 weeks. Mercury will join there about halfway through the month. And then all of this Gemini festival. So all of these air energies make 60-degree angles with our Aries placements. And that is full of open possibilities. I call it the ingredients on a counter aspect. It's a sweet aspect that often requires us to do something, which is no problem for Aries because we're always looking for something to do, right? We want to be busy. We want to be active. When opportunities come to us, we usually, get them let's just snatch them right up, basically, right? We're all over it. So I don't think there'll be any shortage of opportunities at this time. Regardless of the world situation, like I said, these aspects are still at play for us. So it could bring some sweetness or softness or silver linings to other challenges that you have, or just an improved perception to try to have a bigger picture of any of the challenges that may be going on. But from the astrological perspective of the personal planets, there's a lot of sweetness that's happening here for Aries this month. And there will be a lot of movement and a lot of energy and a lot of communication. Now, hopefully that movement will put us out back doing errands and out back moving around in the world. But if it doesn't, it will still be a lot of movement in ways regardless of our contained situation. There are still some energies, the Sun and Taurus moving through the Sun and Taurus and Mercury and Taurus. So Taurus energies don't flow as well with Aries, but they're not super annoying. They're just kind of where we have to slow down a little bit and dot our I's and cross our T's a little bit more, where we want to just kind of blur through. And we might need a little bit of method, a little bit of strategy, a little bit of planning, a little bit of focus on details more than we want. But really, I like this for us because when air and fire get together, as we have in abundance at this time, it's very overstimulating. It makes your mind spin more crazy than usual. You're going to have to really work hard at being grounded. In between being on devices and doing things, I go walk out in my yard. I ground my energy field in the earth. If it's too cold, you can put your third eye up to a tree. Whatever you've got to do to get in the earth vibration. Again, this isn't woo-woo. I talk about this all the time, okay? I have no problem with things that are considered woo-woo either. But a lot of the things that are spiritual or people think of as not having scientific validity actually are science-based. Everything has a vibration that you can measure with an oscilloscope. An oscilloscope measures frequency in hertz, and the earth has a vibration. And we have a vibration in different parts of us. Like an appendix has a vibration. I think it's 82 hertz if I remember. But anyway, it's like everything has a vibration. And when we get whacked out on the devices, or because we're busy, or because planets are doing all this stuff for us, if you go stand out and be in the earth field, it actually can help all of the excessive craziness in your field to settle down. And you're going to need that more at this time, okay? That's why we had to talk about that. Okay, so let's see what else we're going to talk about there. So Venus is retrograde in Gemini. We're going to talk about this, where it is and what that means. But for right now, I just want to talk about the fact that it's retrograde in the sign of Gemini, which again is going to be triple duty of awesomeness on the Aries placements. And that's going to be true in some ways for everybody, but it's going to be extra true for anyone who has 5 through 21 degrees of Aries, because that's Venus is going to move through there, then it's going to move back, then it's going to move through there again. So that's basically going to be, okay, so 5 days into the sign. So maybe like March 20, it's hard to tell exactly because the sun doesn't move into it doesn't move into Aries in the same day every year, but like around March 25th, that's going to be through around April 11th, okay? Or if you know your degrees, your rising or moon, if you're in that bucket. So it's a good portion of the Aries placements that are going to get triple helpings of the sweet aspect of Venus in retrograde. So anything can manifest with Venus in retrograde, unwelcome things, annoying things, things that aren't resolved. But when you have it making a nice aspect to your Aries placement, at least it tilts it more towards the potential for this positive outcome, positive blessings from the past. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about Venus retrograde in the time frame. Venus is going to be retrograde from May 13th or thereabouts, depending on your time zone, through June 25th. But there is shadow period that starts around April 9th or 10th and then lasts until around July 30th or so. These shadow periods are really important. I had somebody make a post that I want to bring up because I want to help educate on this. It's really critical. This period of time, if you include the shadow periods, is around 4 months. That's why I really, really talk about this a lot. 4 months. This transit is affecting us in all of these various ways. So I had the person say, Annie, I'm not buying into shadow periods for the retrogrades. So you have to know that even though I may be the only one talking about these, as I've heard, people have told me nobody else talks about them, okay? There are reasons for that. Partly some of people don't even know about them. Some astrologers don't even know about them. The astrologers that do know about them, they might not want to confuse people. I'm just making guesses here. They might not want to confuse people with all of these details that I give, but I'm an astrology teacher, so I like the details. I feel like they're important. And there are some other reasons depending on, who it is. But regardless of the reason, these shadow periods are mathematical calculations that are determined by the degree at which the planet goes retrograde and the degree at which it goes direct, okay? And so that's how we use those degrees and the movement through those degrees before and after to calculate the days that the shadow period stretches for. So similar to boiling water, if you put a pot on hot flame, it doesn't just 1 second, now it's boiling, right? So and similarly, it's not just May 13th, now it's Venus retrograde. June 25th, now it's June 26th, now it's not Venus retrograde. It doesn't work that way. These orbs of energy that flow into each other and ebb and flow, right? That's shown throughout all of these transits. So when you put the flame on, the bubbles are getting more and more and more and more and more until it reaches the boiling point. So that shadow period beforehand is like you put the heat on and more bubbles. Every day from April 9th to May 13th, there's more and more bubbles, more and more activity, more and more heat from that transit. Then when you take it off the flame or you turn the flame down, it takes a little while for the bubbles to stop going and for it to not be hot anymore. And that's the post-transit. So it fades out, okay? All right, so now that we understand that, Venus rules love, beauty, and money. Beauty is also design. Beauty is your clothes, what you want to, how you see yourself. It's also self-esteem, love. Here's my famous, beautiful lady. Not that men can't also be beautiful, but it's easier for me to draw something that looks similar to a lady. and money, and our relationship with money, and love in our relationships, and design projects and art projects. So it covers a lot of ground. And what happens in Venus retrograde is that we get these goofy Venus goggles on, all right? And the Venus goggles make us think that we're seeing everything clearly. But they're warped. The lenses are warped and we're usually not seeing clearly. So that often causes, after the transit, when the goggles come off, people to say, what was I thinking? That's a common mantra of what happened, mantra or, saying of what happens. What was I thinking? With the tattoo that they got, or the beauty other thing they did to their body, or all the clothes they spent so much money on, or the relationship that they started or left, or the money deals that they made. What was I thinking? Now, this isn't true 100% of the time. It just has an increased odds. So if you know you're not seeing clearly, you might want to be more careful when it comes to certain things. Now, things that are pretty much in the clear are low stakes things. So like if it doesn't matter, if you have the disposable income, if you're making a decision about something that doesn't really matter in the long term, doesn't matter. Okay? Or easy to fix. If you're changing something, easy to fix. Like if you want to get a new, new pillow cases or something like that, something new, or paint a wall, right? Not very expensive, not very much time. If you don't like it, you can change it back. But when the Venus goggles come off and you're like, what was I thinking? You want the things that you put in place to be changeable. Okay, so low stakes, easy to fix, short term. If you do something and then you turn out with the goggles on to say, oh God, I'm not sure about that. If it's short term, then you don't have that much more to go through from the decision that you made. You see, those are my general guidelines. And I do give lots of details about every single thing that I could possibly think of with Venus retrograde. I have it in the blogs, my Venus retrograde blog, and those are in my video. And I have a whole 12 Venus retrograde through the signs and houses blog series. I also have wonderful attributes of people born with Venus retrograde at birth. Because people who are born with Venus retrograde at birth, you get a bad rap. This transit gets a bad rap. And there are a lot of amazing things. If you're expecting a child in that time, or if you were born then, there are a lot of traits that people tend to have. So you can check that out all at anniehelpsyou.com. So now that we know all these things, okay, so what you want to be careful of is the high stakes, hard to change, long term. Okay, because that's the kind of stuff where if the goggles come off and you're like, Okay. Now, all of this being said, Venus retrograde can be a bargain hunter's delight, because so many people who are not my viewers are just pitching things of value left and right. They're worried about money, they're stressed, they're freaking out, they're having weird perceptions, they're not seeing straight, and they're like, woo, get rid of it. And that means you can pick up things at a smoking deal. So if you pick up things at a smoking deal and you're prepared to deal with it if it's not what you think it is, like let's say you buy an antique and you pay a little money for it, but it's not that much, it's a deal, and then it turns out to not be worth anything. Well, then it doesn't matter. But if you buy a house in Venus retrograde and it turns out to be a money pit, which does happen, you want to make sure that you're prepared to deal with that possibility. Or just do really good inspections, like extra inspections. Like when I buy houses, I go talk to people in the neighborhood and I'm like, you know anything about that house? You know anything about what went on there? What goes on in the neighborhood? Are there things that I should know? Is there like this loud siren that goes off at 3 o'clock in the morning whatever, just weird things. And things like that are like things that you want to research and before you buy something, because you want to do your extra due diligence if you're making a purchase. All right, so now we can see where Venus is going to be retrograde for everybody. Early degree placements, that's pretty much going to be in the 3rd house. You might get some whispers here in the 2nd, but it's really a 3rd house transit for you all. Middle degree placements, you tend to be split down the middle with your transits here. So 3rd and 2nd house for you all. We'll talk about what this means in a second. We just want to get everybody on the board. And for late degree placements, that's going to be predominantly in the 2nd house. Again, if you're early in the late degree designation, you might, and even if you're not, like you all might have some whispers in the 3rd house, but it's a predominantly 2nd house transit for you all in the late degree. So what does it mean? All right, so let's break it down. Let's get our little grid. And in my series, Venus Retrograde through the signs and houses, you'll see even more details about what it means when it's retrograde through these different houses. But I'll just give you a quick overview. So early and middle, 3rd house. So you want to look at my blog, Venus Retrograde in Gemini. Actually, everyone wants to look at the Venus Retrograde in Gemini because that's the sign. Now, remember what happens with Aries placements. Aries has a natural chart. So when something is moving through a sign, it's also moving through that house for you, except sometimes the late placements, as you've seen here. Okay, so 3rd house, Gemini, you want to see Venus retrograde in 3rd house in Gemini. Might have some whispers for the late degree placements. And then for middle and late degree placements, we've got 2nd house, and that could have some whispers for the early degree placements, but it's not the predominant feature. However, since the 2nd house rules money, it's one of Venus's areas of rulership. Everybody in the zodiac has the energy of Venus retrograde through the 2nd house because that's part of what goes on just with the energy of Venus itself. All right, now that we have everyone on the board, Venus in Gemini, Venus in the 3rd house, that has to do with your communication and your transportation, your relatives that are not your parents or kids. So money opportunities. Maybe your brother owes you money and that topic comes up again. Maybe your sister talked about a business idea with you. That's money, So we basically take the energy of the past, this is our equation, add it to money, love, beauty, and add it to the energy of the sign and house. All right, so in this case, it's Gemini 3rd house, and that equals our potentials. So anything happening from the past, for good, for better or worse, things unresolved. Let's say there's a dispute about money with your uncle. It comes back out. Let's say your uncle said, I'll loan you money for a car whenever you're ready for that. And then in the Venus retrograde, you're like, remember my uncle said that. You can go back, get the money. Things like that. Venus isn't the same as Mercury retrograde when it comes to large purchases. It's different, but it rules the financial aspect of it and the aesthetic aspect. Okay, so many a person has bought a brand new car in Venus retrograde. Maybe they got a good deal on it and it was fine. Maybe they could afford it. That was fine. It sustained cosmetic damage. soon after, that either they decided to not fix or something. So like the aesthetics were affected from getting it in the transit. Or something with a phone, you get it all scratched up as soon as you get it. If you can afford it, and you're getting a smoking deal, and you're convinced for sure that your financial situation is not going to change through you not having enough money to keep up with the payment that you commit to, you can buy these things pretty freely, cars and things like that. Just beware of the tendency for something to become a money pit and for people to all of a sudden have their financial circumstances changed. And that's what we look out more for here. And also the Venus goggles, like, oh yeah, I don't mind having an extra $100 payment because I love how this thing looks. And then afterwards you're like, I'm saddled with this payment, for however long, and all this interest that goes on that. So those are the kind of things you have to consider, but you may get smoking deals on the device, on this, on that, but you want to read the paperwork carefully. You want to, do all of your due diligence there. The same thing when it comes to like business deals. I'm not necessarily recommending that you like go gung-ho into a business deal with your uncle because that came back from the past, because you might still not be seeing clearly. But the retrograde is a fantastic time to research it, to talk about it, to kick it around, to do a little experimenting, to feel into it, to do a feasibility study on it, something like that. Okay, so for the middle degree placements and the late degree placements, you're going to have extra focus on money. Everyone's got that money potential with Venus retrograde because it rules the money sector. But those of you in the middle and late degree designation, you're going to have that second house. So how you spend money, money from the past, clients from the past may show up like crazy. If you need money or a job or something like that, going to contacts from the past might be better serving you. If you get an urge to communicate with a client from the past, they might hear from you and say, oh yeah, I wanted to buy your new thing, or I wanted to get back in touch or something. So that's a good segue. Serious reevaluation of your finances, of your budget, of your credit, paying stuff off. Someone might really evaluate saying, instead of taking this trip, I'm going to pay this debt off, or instead of spending this certain money, I'm going to, solidify my financial situation. Shrewdness, smartness with money really reigns supreme in the Venus retrograde, more than extravagant spending. But the thing about it is always a cosmic joke, right? The things that we're not supposed to do in Venus retrograde, we're most drawn to do. You'll see it happen. People are going to see their hair and say, I want to cut all my 20 years of dreadlocks off now in Venus retrograde. Maybe that's for you. Maybe it's supposed to be that way. But if it's not easy to change, which that would not be, just remember the goggles. Remember the goggles, and maybe you want to wait it out and see how you feel when things regulate. All right, so money, sustainability. The topic of sustainability is something I always talk about with the second house because I'm very focused on that myself, and it is a division of the second house. But the things that have happened in the world really bring our eyes back to this, like, is your spending sustainable? This is a second house thing that tends to come up. Is your income sustainable? Is the amount of money you're putting into work sustainable? Are you in a living situation that's sustainable? Are your payments sustainable? Are you, do you need to start growing a garden or start sprouting or start, doing something where your reliance on services and goods that might not be readily accessible in the times of major world changes? Maybe that would be a topic that, you might want to put some money into it, of course, obeying the guidelines. All right, so now let's talk about the eclipses. I'm excited about the eclipse in Sagittarius because it makes a sweet angle to Aries placements. And that's true for all Aries because having a fire sign, a fellow fire sign eclipse, it just blends really well, okay? And we've got 3 eclipses in this series. And so the odds for mischief are high because the Cancer Capricorn ones, which we're going to talk about more in the June and July report, are at challenging angles for Aries. And you've known this because we've had this going on for 2 years. Last eclipse cycle with the Cancer and Capricorn, I personally experienced some of the most devastating news that I ever have experienced. And that's part of why the charts had not been up in recent times. I couldn't do it because I was grieving something eclipse related that went away from my life that I really didn't want to go away. that happens, especially when it's at those difficult angles. But this Sagittarius Gemini series that's starting now, that's going to go into 2021, they're at sweet angles for our Aries placement. So I'm very hopeful for us that we can have more of a pleasant time, from these aspects. Okay, so 15 degrees of Sag. This is going to be great for everybody, as we talked about. But there's also like this between 10 and 20 degrees, because we do 5 degrees in either direction. So people with Aries placements from 10 to 20 degrees, and I've said this before, but I'm going to recommend it again. If you don't know your birth chart, look up how to run a free birth chart online and see if you have more than one Aries placement. Because I have a ton of Sag placements. So anything that's relevant for a Sag horoscope is relevant for me times a million, because I have so many placements. And these degrees that we look at, you can drill down more into your chart when I talk about degrees if you know how many different Aries placements you have, all right? Because if you have any within this spectrum like this, then you're more likely to be more profoundly affected by this eclipse. So between 10 and 20 degrees is basically like April 1st through 10th around, give or take, a day or so in either direction. And then around April 6th being the most powerful direct hit. But since it's a sweet angle, we're hoping that that would be very positive. And if something positive doesn't come, it could be from those mischief makers, those other ones, okay? So now let's look to see exactly where that's going to be for everybody. Early degree placements, that's pretty solidly in the 9th house, but it could have a little whisper into the 8th. Middle degree placements, as usual, you're on the line. 9th and 8th, or both. Fair manifestation range there. And late degree placements, you really more have that in the 8th. Depending on your exact degree, if you're a little bit earlier in the spectrum, you might have some whispers over there to the 9th house. So I'm not going to go into great detail about what these eclipses entail, because I used to do that and it put a lot of pressure on the horoscopes, made them much longer with a lot of details, because I was giving information about what I've seen for 20 years of every single thing I could think of how eclipses tend to manifest in those houses. So now what I'm doing is I made a whole 12 eclipse through the signs and houses video series that's on my homepage on YouTube. So you can search for Annie Botticelli YouTube, or AnnieHelpsYouTV.com. You'll also get there that way. So early and middle with a whisper to the late, you're going to look up eclipses in the 9th house or Sag. Now, really, because the eclipse is actually in Sag, I put Gemini there. I'm supposed to say Sag. Really, because the eclipse is actually in Sagittarius. That's going to be true for everyone in the zodiac, but it's extra true with double helpings for you all in the early middle degree placement with some whispers to the late. And then middle and late degree placements with some whispers for the early. Look at the eclipses through the 8th house or Scorpio and see the very many, very powerful, very possibly intense things that can occur from that. So overall, A++++ potentials from these factors that we're looking at. Can't see your personal chart, so we can't factor that in. The mischief makers are also going to be bringing in some things. So I do expect some bittersweet endings, but from the Cancer and Capricorn eclipses, but there's a high chance for bittersweetness, meaning like you're happy you're moving on to the next stage, but there's some sadness around it. Okay, so that's going to definitely be eclipse season mantras or themes that come up for you all. So hopefully this month is full of ease and grace compared to some of the previous months, with the aspects that weren't lighting up as well for us.
Okay, so definitely look in the notes below this video. If you click the little arrow that says more underneath the video, it will reveal written notes. In those notes, I have the links to my Venus Retrograde video. I have the links to the blogs for Venus Retrograde through the signs and houses. And I also have the link to loomlife.com, which is where you can register for that free class on claiming victory from viruses. And you can also see my other resources, including my course, Becoming a Professional Astrologer. Astrology is always important, but in these times of what the types of things that are going on now, understanding astrology in a different way can be very, very helpful to our own individual peace and process, and for helping others. So if you want to learn to do that, you can check that out at loomlife.com as well, LUME life.com. And you can see more blogs at anniehelpsyou.com. I have lots and lots of blogs. And at cozybysweetstarlight.com, you can, again, this link will be in the notes underneath as well. You can find written horoscopes by me and Astrology Kissed blogs, how to use astrology in your day-to-day in wonderful ways. Most of the resources that I create for you are free, so make sure that you tap into those. I only have a very small amount of paid services compared to my free resources, and those are for people who want to go deeper into my teachings and my work. But otherwise, just know that there's so much for you. Just explore the websites that I'm sending you to. So I hope you have a wonderful month. I hope that you can stay positive and make the most of the opportunities that are coming to us through these transits, the big ones and the small ones. Venus retrograde is actually a big one, but it's kind of dwarfed in some ways underneath the titans of the zodiac clashing in these Capricorn placements. But it still is going to have Venus retrograde, even though it's on this different level than these big guys. It's really going to have a lot of effect on your day-to-day experience during this month and beyond. So I do hope you have the best month possible, and I'll see you soon. Bye.